Welcome to the Lynn Community Television Show. I'm Sean Donahue. Here with me today, Chairperson of the Human Rights Commission here in the City of Lynn, Pamela Freeman. And we're here today to talk about the Commission, the mission statement, if you will, protecting and preserving civil and human rights for all Lynn citizens. We're going to get into the Commission a little bit more in detail, but first and foremost, I'd like to introduce Pam and give her an opportunity to explain who she is and what she does. Pam, take it away.
Hello, my name is Pam Freeman. I'm the Chairperson of the Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission started dating back to 2012. I'm here because I'm a citizen. I love the City of Lynn. It's a wealth of diversity, and I think the Human Rights Service and Commission will serve to help and educate people in our city.
Without a doubt, and today its function hasn't been more prevalent than it probably has in the past, especially you've got this rise and a lot of questions. I mean, there are a lot of differences today, and a lot of it has to do with people and knowing a matter of where they stand or how it works. So I think it's important that we've got you onto the program to explain what the Human Rights Commission does. Outside of human rights, I mean, you guys are also trying to create awareness about all these other cultures and make them aware, like, hey, nobody's here to hurt one another. We're all here as friends. Let's be citizens and go to work and build a great community. I'm rambling. So I want to talk a little bit about just the Commission overall. What does the Commission do?
So, that's kind of a well-known question these days around the City of Lynn. Like, what do we do? Well, human rights, what we do is, first and foremost, our main goal is to listen and connect to the community. And, we investigate and resolve complaints. But we have to go through a process. And the process sometimes may, be a short process, sometimes it's a long process. But the process is really looking at how can we support people when they feel like they've been discriminated against, violated against, and how can we make the City of Lynn stronger, that if it's an incident that it is a civil rights, that we really hone into it and really say, hey, listen, we need to do something about this.
Right.
We need to, connect people to different resources. And we want people of all walks of life in Lynn to feel comfortable in Lynn. We want, the beautiful Muslim lady walking around with her beautiful veil scarf and say, hey, listen, I'm part of the City of Lynn. We want the young kids that may, have an event this coming Saturday talking about gay pride. We want them to know that they're a valuable part of Lynn. We want the community resident that feels as though that maybe, a situation with housing, led them to feeling like they were discriminated. We want them to feel like they're part of the City of Lynn. And we want Lynn to embrace all of its cultures.
Lynn, for the longest period, has really played that gateway role in the city, I mean, in the whole entire country. We're kind of been like a mini Ellis Island, yes. But rather than pulling up on a boat, you drive on up or you fly in through Logan. And Lynn has always really been one of those staple towns. Are there any other communities that have a Human Rights Commission like Lynn that are maybe nearby?
So there are two communities that nearby that we have been working with, and that's Somerville, Massachusetts, and Cambridge, Massachusetts.
So similar demographic to
Very
Lynn.
similar demographics,
okay.
Yes.
So what I really dig about Lynn is, like, there's 92,000 people here, and there's well over 100 different languages that are spoken in the city of Lynn. All the different cultures, all the different foods, all the different types of celebrations that go on. It really gives you a perspective, and it's like a worldly perspective without even leaving the city of Lynn, which is a kind of cool thing. So it's definitely something worth embracing. So we're talking about what the Commission does, but why do we have a Commission? What's the point?
I think if you have encountered a civil rights violation or discrimination, it's a clearinghouse. It's a house that our community can come to and say, I feel like my rights have been violated. I feel like I've been discriminated against. And it's a place where people come and we can either connect them to resources or we can connect them to, resolving a complaint.
Or even the know-how, the knowledge.
The know-how, the knowledge. And most of the time, Sean, it's about communication. It's about miscommunication. And we sometimes, kind of intertwine it in maybe that it is a violation or it's discrimination. But many of the complaints that we reviewed last year was mere communication.
Right.
And that's where Lynn needs to get strong, is being able to communicate with, its residents.
Just being open to the idea of each other. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the story, but there is a story about a guy who wanted everything to be just how he wanted it. And he ended up moving away from this group, moving away from this group, moving away from that group. All of a sudden, he found himself alone, and he couldn't do anything because he realized he needed those people. At the end of the day, I mean, you know, there are a lot of folks out there that are arguing whether or not they are smart or they're not.
Yes.
And I think, you know, like what it is really how many different types of people you can communicate with and how effectively you can communicate with them. We're talking a little bit about the commission overall, an overall view. I'd like to get into like the what and the who. So like civil rights, like what could be an example of like a civil right that could be violated, maybe easily, that we're not even aware we're doing?
So a real simple matter could be housing. A Hispanic family goes to rent an apartment and has been turned down silently because of their race, or maybe, so to speak, their first impression. Or it could be, you know, an African couple moving into the city, not knowing too much about the city, and coming in and maybe not dressed appropriately, where we would think something would be appropriate. So it could be housing issues, housing discrimination. That happens quite often here in the community. And so in that case, if you feel violated, we want you to bring that complaint to the commission. Right. You know, there's many complaints that we viewed last year, and it was a matter of miscommunication with the landlord. You know, something as simple as saying to the tenant, maybe the Hispanic parent didn't quite understand what he was saying. I have 5 people in front of you. Or you know, we don't take your kind. You know, something very silent that sometimes can be left, you know, to a point where people feel as though that they're being isolated, as that gentleman you talked about.
Right.
So housing issues is very prominent. You know, it could be, you know, we had a situation where there was, you know, people feeling they were stopped, you know, in the community of Lynn unfairly, not to realize that, you know, sometimes that was for the protection of our city, but it's how we communicate those things to our city as well.
Right. Yeah, people got to be aware of what's going on. Why is this happening? Okay, I understand now.
Exactly.
So we're talking a little bit about, you know, what human rights are. I got one of your pamphlets right here. Some examples: ancestry, criminal record,
yes.
Disability, maternity leave, national origin, race of color, religious creed, sex, gender identity, sexual harassment, sexual orientation, age. So these are all examples of what our human rights are. Yes. So these are all ways that people are discriminated against, whether it be their disability or yes. Lack of ability, or maybe extra ability, you know, whether it's their sex, religious creed, race of color. You know, human rights today, it seems like the big pinnacle, the pillar yes. everybody's talking about is racism. You know, and I see that word and then I look up the etiology of it and realize how young it is. And I'm like, well, why was this word created? And I think today what you have is a huge indifference and it's a separation of culture. Yeah. And people are unaware of each other's cultures and it scares them. You know, it's like, oh, okay, you can choose to avoid it, but in the end of the day, like, yeah. we're all going to be living together, at least be aware and understand why it is the way it is. And I just kind of want to gain your insight on this. Like, you know, the big subject today, racism. Like, I mean, what's your viewpoint on it?
I think racism, my viewpoint on it is that it goes back to education. It goes back to teaching. And it goes back to maybe the older generation kind of stepping up out of our boxes, because when you look at this generation, our generation of young youth do not see racism.
Right.
You know, they may see it that they dislike someone because of an issue, but yeah. not because of the color of their skin. And I think it goes back to something that you said, is being comfortable with one another, but recognizing that we are different, but we're all the same. Right. Because, you know, at the end of the day, Sean, if I need a blood transfusion and you match, you know, it doesn't matter what color you are.
I got your back.
You have my back, and I need your blood, Sean. So I think it all goes back to education. Yeah. And I think if we could really hone in on this city about education piece, you know, looking at the woman that I mentioned about having the veil and the scarf on and not be intimidated by her, but saying, listen, she's embracing her culture. Yeah. And that's what human rights is all about, embracing our culture as one.
Right. and
So-
you know, the human culture overall. I mean, you know, today, you know, we're talking about racism and in Lynn. I just growing up in Lynn, going into high school in Lynn, I was really lucky because I was exposed to so many different cultures.
Yes.
And then I went to Framingham State, which is a very big white school. Like,
Yes.
and I'm walking around, I'm like, there are a lot of white people here. I didn't know there was this many of us. But I realized like it was less fun, you know. And I still to this day can't grasp the idea like how you can't like somebody because of the way that they look. Like it's unfair, you know. And I mean, there has to be a reason why. And I think ignorance really it is, and it comes down to the education
Yes.
of human beings when they're at a young age to be empathetic towards other people. You know, people who are in a situation of hardship, people who are in a situation where, you know, maybe they don't have all the things that they need. I'm babbling again. So we're talking a little bit about the commission. We've covered what the commission does, why it exists. We've covered what some examples of human rights are. We haven't really covered who the human rights ordinance protects in the city of Lynn.
It protects everyone in the city of Lynn. It's not designated towards this group or that group, Sean. It protects everyone in the city of Lynn.
Okay, so now I've got some detail here. The Lynn Human Rights Ordinance also protects against discrimination on the basis of citizenship, economic
Yes.
status, ethnicity, family or marital status. So that's one too.
Yes.
People will say, hey, no, there's too many people, you can't live here. That's something that they do. You know, military status. Somebody might not be for the military, or maybe they are, and they're only looking for veterans. It's, you know, it's a tough thing. I want to talk a little bit about, you know, how people can get involved with the organization. Human rights seems to be a hot ticket item
Yes,
today.
yes.
And I think there are a lot of people who are sitting at home right now who have contemplated, well, where can I give some time, or how can I help out? And maybe this is something that they can do. So how do you get involved with the Human Rights Commission?
So you could go onto our website, the Lynn City Hall website, or we have a Facebook as well. But getting involved is taking that step, getting up off the couch, walking into the City Hall, and asking for an application to become involved. It's really simple. But get involved because you have it in your heart that you want to see change. Get involved because you want to support everyone in the City of Lynn. And get involved, more importantly, because it's just your civic duty. I think, you know, at the end of the day, sometimes it's not always about a paycheck. Sometimes it's always about, you know, getting connected to our community. You know, I became involved in human rights very young. Abner Darby and Virginia Barton. I would sit in the city, in the cultural center, I'd sit in the cultural center and be mesmerized by how engaged they were in civil rights, dating back to many, many years ago. I won't date myself on national Lynn TV, but I just think that, you know, getting involved is a phone call. It's coming in, getting an application. It's helping us at one of the events. We'll be out on Saturday, June 4th, I believe, at the
St. Stephen's,
St.
right?
Stephen's at the Lynn Pride event. Helping out at a table. You know, getting together neighbors. We'll be running 12 focus groups, talking about what human rights does and how we can get involved and looking at different complaints. Those sort of things.
So now you guys meet when?
We meet the third Tuesday.
Third Tuesday of the month, every month.
Each month at 6 p.m.
Room 408.
Room 402.
402,
Sean.
here at City Hall.
Here at City Hall.
My guy, Dave's looking at me, he's like, told you that. I did. Told you to change that 8 to a 2.
Yes.
So room 402, it's right upstairs, right here in City Hall. You can also call to these guys, 781-586-6740. We're talking about the Human Rights Commission and how you can get involved. Sounds like there's a number of ways you can get involved, whether it's on the commission, whether it's volunteering,
Yes.
whether it's doing all that. We were talking a little bit before earlier in the program about some of the surrounding communities that also have a commission that focuses around human rights. So Somerville and Cambridge. So is there what's the big correlation today? What's the big ticket item that you see more or less than anything else?
Employment violations, housing violations.
Is it the same thing in Cambridge and Somerville too?
Well, Somerville and Cambridge are far more advanced than we are in Lynn. They have police powers, so they're a little more advanced, but they've been in operation a lot longer than we have. but it's in two amazing entities, two amazing cities. I also wanted to mention Salem has No Place for Hate also. So it's probably a smaller division like Lynn's, and there is no place for hate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there isn't, and that's only gonna eat yourself up.
Yeah.
You know, I think we've all gone through that period of time where it's like, I hate this, and it's like, well, that's a really, I don't know if I should be using that word. That's a bad word, right? I mean, we grow up trying to learn about, you know, what's right and what's wrong, and you know, generally our emotions are telling us what's right and what's wrong. If you don't like that, then, you know, it's something that you should really consider. Why don't you like it? Maybe learn a little bit more about it. So here in the City of Lynn, you guys have been in existence since 2012, so about 4 years. Are there any continuous improvements that we can expect to see out of the commission?
I think the continuous improvements would be more outreach in the community, education, some focus groups, really trying to get our community to understand what human rights does and what we're all about. But I also wanted to mention, Sean, that, you know, human rights investigation and complaints, it goes through a process. So it's not something that happens overnight. And I just want the community to understand that process, that sometimes you would think that something should be so black and white and so simple, but it's not. And, you know, we want to be effective in our process. And so being effective is that people walk away saying, wow, you know, something, I really feel good, you know, I feel like, you know, I was heard. And then some people might say, you know, I don't feel like, you know, I was in agreement with what the process, but guess what? It gave me, you know, a gateway to more information, so I'm better aware at this point.
Yeah,
and I think it's about awareness.
Yeah, providing that insight, I mean, is so important, because just take driving, for example, in the City of Lynn. If you don't live around here, you stay out of Lynn, and you don't drive. Yeah. And I don't think it's because everybody's like really just jerks. I think it's just everybody has a different way that they learned how to drive. So it's like down in the DR, a stop sign is more of a suggestion, you know, whereas up here it's like everybody's expecting you to stop at that stop sign, or at least, you know, roll through it, right, in Massachusetts.
Right.
So I think, you know, people need to be aware, like, one, yeah, absolutely, you know, there are going to be indifferences. We're going to be different at the same time, but we got to really come together and agree on a way of life, a quality of life, a standard of life that we all want to achieve together. Because that American culture, that can only exist if everybody's participating in the same in that same goal. This is a loaded question, but I mean, in your opinion, how do you think we can get there?
I think we're going to get there is when everyone is in the circle. And by being in the circle, you're going to partake in the circle. You're going to participate in the circle. If we have some in and some out, we're never going to get there. But it's about every organization, community residents, families, all of us working together. And I think we can get there in the City of Lynn. When we have these different separate silos and everyone's doing certain things, we're not going to get there. But if everybody believes that human rights can be something positive in Lynn, we're going to get there, Sean. But it's all of us jumping in the circle together. So I think that's just one way we could get there.
I couldn't agree more. You know, we absolutely have to involve ourselves. You know, I was having this analogy with my girlfriend the other day, and we were talking a little bit about, you know, why we are where we are today. And it's like we're really just split images of our parents. We just look like them. And it's like we're all just kind of water droplets, free flow, and then all of a sudden you have an option to get back into the pool and be part of the community. Some people don't choose to. Hopefully they decide to choose to. Pam Freeman, chairperson over at the Human Rights Commission. I want to say thank you to my guests for coming on. The Human Rights Commission, you can find more information on Facebook of these guys, Facebook.com/COLHRC. They're also on the City of Lynn website. Reach out to them via the phone, 781-586-6740. That's it for the Lynn Community Television Show from the studio here at Lynn Community Television. I'm Sean Donahue, wishing you all the best.